Hey everyone, this is Kenny Coins with Marathon Money, and this is Charles Henry. I didn't ask for your last name before the show. I,
Monchau. Yeah, I know it's not
Mon,
easy.
sure,
Monchau. Yeah.
Charles Henry Monchau. Is
Yeah, you
that
can say
correct?
Charles. Yeah, and you can say Charles. It's gonna be perfect. Yeah.
Man, so I asked Charles to come on the show on LinkedIn. He said yes. He's actually you're in, am I correct? You're in private banking.
Yeah. Swiss private
Right.
banking.
You know what I mean? Swiss banking, like I told him, I used to be in an investment world. I used to also be in like private banking as well. This guy has done a lot. You've been doing it for what, 20,
25
25,
years. Yeah, I'm not that.
25 plus years in
Yeah.
private. So your wealth of knowledge is probably definitely, with you traveling all over the world, your wealth of knowledge is probably like insane. You probably know about things that we don't know about, things coming in the future, how people should use their money. Um, Man, but tell us how you got your start.
First, just one observation is that the good thing with markets is that it always reminds you that you know nothing. That's the, let's say, the best humility lessons is financial markets. So the way I started, look, in Switzerland, we do many things in Switzerland, not just chocolate and banking. But banking is indeed something that many people do, and so I pure coincidence. I started an internship in a bank, and I told myself, "Wow, this is what I want to do," because I noticed that it was, I was sitting in a trading room, and it was moving, every day. There was a lot of action. You can feel that there were a bit of let's say tension, and that's a lot of unexpected things coming. So I love the feeling. I know that Kelly, you've been in training before, so you know what it is. There is a sense that even though you sit in the office, the day to day is never the same. So I really enjoy this. And there was one guy sitting close to the trading room who was doing CIO, so Chief Investment Officer. So basically, he was running the team. And what I really like is that actually everyone was expecting a lot from him. Everyone was expecting, him to know about equities, about fixed income, about geopolitics, about macro. They were taking him, into clients meeting. He also had to run a team. So I told myself, wow, that's great, because you really, touch base on so many things. And then suddenly I found my goal. I want to become chief investment officer, because that's related to investment words, and you need to multitask. You need to be knowledgeable about many things. I think that's the key, is that whatever the job you do, is at least to have a goal, because you never know what will be your career path. Sometimes, you expect something, it doesn't happen. You are disappointed. Someone gets a title, or someone's going to pay rise, and you don't get it. And then you can become very frustrated. But I didn't care about this, because I knew, what was going to be my path. And I always, let's say, kind of hang on this, saying, okay, if I want to get to the job, I just, need to, let's say, gather as much experience and knowledge as I can. And then, time will tell, and if I believe in my let's say, in my career path and my ability to do it, things will happen, at some points. And I think that's, to me, what is the most important, is to have a goal, have a target.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing start to your journey. What are you like seeing out there that is coming to the world that people should pay attention to?
Well, I think, it's there are always two ways of looking at things. If you look at the headlines every day, they are ugly. There are conflicts everywhere. There is wealth income inequality everywhere. You can make it a very negative one. On the other hand, because it's always a question of, let's say, the glass being half full, half empty, there are also so many opportunities. Like, for instance, in terms of innovation, never ever we have seen so many innovations coming. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, genomics, robotics, electric vehicles, alternative energy. It's full of opportunities for everyone. and also the world is has really been opening up. It's you can see that wherever you come, if you work hard, and you are better than the others, you have your chance. I'm currently, having we are having this conversation. I'm sitting in Dubai. I can see, it's the whole world is trying to come to size an opportunity, coming from India or Pakistan or Africa, East Asia. They can see that there are so many things, happening, and if they work hard, if they have an idea that others don't, they have their chance. So I tend to try to look at the positives, because the negatives are so many negatives. If you look at the negative, you start, being depressed. But if you look at the positive, I think that the lesson here is that there are so many things happening. So everyone has a chance. I think I
Where
want to believe in this.
m- I know so many things out there can be extremely negative. It's hard to take a chance. It's hard to take a risk. It's hard to find your footing. But you probably have done the research. You probably have done um, the thing that most people don't do. What opportunities and what direction or what country are you seeing major opportunities coming from?
Well, first, the US remains the benchmark, for all of us. Look, there is a new, trend with AI and machine learning. It's mainly, when you think about it, is OpenAI, Nvidia, Microsoft. They are all US based. So the US remains the benchmark, and I think that we can see, with let's say, in terms of dynamism, it's a lot of things is happening in the US. But on the other hand, well, if you look at like a country like India, for instance, it's actually, booming. You can see the growth, coming from there. It's huge competition. So to get to the top, you need to be very good, and it's really driving the country. Not far away, you have a country, like Vietnam, which is also booming, taking advantage of the fact that there is a kind of drift currently between, let's say, the relationship between the US and China, also Europe and China. So Europe and China, as Europe and the US are looking for, let's say, new partners, and Vietnam is taking advantage of it. In the Middle East, so many countries are opening up. The UAE is booming. Saudi is really opening. It's not, let's say, too much advertised, but if you go to Riyadh or Jeddah, you can see that there are so many societal changes, that they want to build a new country. There is so much impulse coming from there. And then if you move to the other part of the world, like for instance Latin America, not far away from you guys, countries like Brazil, Peru, Colombia are also opening up. So I think that, to me, what is super important is that before it was all about the developed world, the US and Europe. And now you can see that the East and the South, they are really sizing the opportunity. In Europe, for instance, the boom is coming from Eastern Europe, from countries like Poland, so Romania, Slovenia, Lithuania. They're booming. So it's not about the old Europe; it's about the new Europe. So I think that's something which is really inspiring, is to see all of the opportunities coming, let's say, in terms of geography. And when it comes to sectors, or like AI is changing everything, or social media, the internet has changed so many things. We are talking today, and I work for a boutique private bank called Seed. You probably never heard about it, but I know we connected because nowadays, if you do things differently, you can use sources like X or Twitter or LinkedIn to try to convey a different image, a different message, and then we connect. So I think that's great, because before, like, to be known, to do some branding, you needed to pay very high advertising on newspapers or on the airports. Nowadays, it's you can really, let's say, connect with people very easily. You can create a business on the web very easily, without too much capital, and using brain power. and hard work. I think that's very, very inspiring, and that's a huge opportunity for so many people.
You know, we speak on opportunities, and I read a few days ago that India is pushing to get 1.5 billion people to working and changing their entire economy to basically a working class economy. Um, I think India is in on the forefront of emerging to be a rival for China and US.
Right.
Do you see them as being the forefront of innovation and a working economy?
Yeah, definitely. And well, you're based in New York. If you go to, you walk through the campus of Columbia University, you will find so many Indians. They know that they also need to get education, uh, of the best universities in developed worlds, to make a difference. But interestingly, they don't necessarily need to work for US or European firms afterwards, because there are so many successful Indian-based, companies, and also they see that the opportunities is also in India. So I think that's great, because they are very open, let's say, to the old words, but they are, let's say, moving the needle in the new words. I think they are very good in anything which is related to technology, including AI. So they are the forefront of this. But what you mentioned also, so bringing people, 1.5 billion people, to, let's say, the working class and middle class and upper class afterwards, is also this new trend of made in India. They are really getting, let's say, very strong on the manufacturing side. You've probably seen that Apple has moved some factories out of China into India, and more of this is coming. So there is a new trend there. But India is not the only one. Again, there are so many, let's say, new, let's say, countries, new people coming, and nowadays, again, everyone has his chance. So that's very encouraging.
So, working for a boutique investment firm, what are you guys doing to seize opportunities out there?
Well, first, there is still high demands for, let's say, clients who wants to save, for their retirement, and also save for their kids, to get, let's say, high quality bespoke wealth management services. It sounds a bit trivial, because investing money, saving has been there forever, but it's not a science. It's something which is not easy to get, and there is still high demand for professional, tailor-made wealth management advisors. So that's our core business. And then there is also something we do, is on the alternative investment side, is to invest into new type of opportunities. So, for instance, on the alternative investment side, we look at litigation finance, which is something which is quite new, and that clients like. And also, we look at digital assets. Digital assets is something which is very new, but there are so many opportunities. Not just going long, let's say, Bitcoin or Ether, but also arbitrage opportunities. If you remember the good old days of hedge funds, where there was so much alpha to grab, nowadays it's quite difficult. But on the digital asset side, on the cryptocurrency side, there are so many alpha opportunities. And this is something we do. So we invest into managers which are able to extract alpha from crypto markets. And this is something we offer to our European and Latin American and Middle East clients.
Wow. So you think so your boutique firm think Bitcoin, Ethereum, which is the major players, are going to have a bigger impact than what they have now and be able to sustain people's retirement even for the future? Is that what I'm hearing?
So we know that obviously, these are super high volatile. The first you mentioned, they are very volatile. So it needs to be something that clients understand, that they understand the risk. But more, let's say, generally speaking, we like to say, let's follow Larry. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. I think this year he came with two very important statements and action. The first one, in terms of the action, he launched this ETF on Bitcoin and then on Ether. I think that's a validation, not only from BlackRock, but probably also from the US, that these, let's say, major cryptos are here to stay. And indeed, when you look at the flows going into this ETF, there seems to be some interest, not only from retail investors, but also institutional investors. But he made a very important second statement, which is about tokenization. So basically, tokenization, to make it simple, so you basically create a digital certificate ownership on anything. It can be a fund, it can be a real estate building, it can be a private company, it can be copyrights on a video, on a music stream. And here, with his statement saying that BlackRock believes that there is a future in tokenizing basically the words, that means that indeed, in terms of digital assets opportunities, it will not be only about Bitcoin or Ether. It's going to be really about moving the world from stock exchanges to asset exchanges, and offering the opportunity to also many savers to invest like institutions. I'm going to give you an example. If you are today in pension funds, you can invest into real estate, for instance, in Australia, or you can invest into private companies based in Europe, or why not India, because we mentioned India. If you're a retail investor, it's very difficult to access these asset classes. Through tokenization, it will be made possible to access to these asset classes in a more efficient way, in a less costly way, and also with lower minimum. And I think that this is going to change the game. This is also why BlackRock and other large assets managers in the US and the rest of the world, they understand that there is a big opportunity for them, but also for the clients in, let's say, expanding the scope of investment opportunities. So when I'm talking about saving here for retirement, I'm not necessarily talking about Bitcoin or Ether, which are indeed very volatile, but really, let's say, giving access to a broad spectrum of asset classes to savers. And by the way, these new, let's say, opportunities will offer to investors, let's say, the main features of what we are all looking for when it comes to investment, i.e., capital growth, yields, and diversification. So I think this is the big opportunities, we do see with digital assets.
A lot of people are looking at digital assets. We see that BlackRock is creating a foundation and creating a road for retail investors to get in.
Yeah.
Obviously, digital assets is the easiest route. You can get in, get out fairly easily. It had, at this point, it had tested of time. It's been over a decade at this point. Bitcoin's been around, but I'm looking at those digital assets as, in the future, if countries are getting into it, countries are buying lumps, $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. You got El Salvador, you got Venezuela, you got other countries who also in the forefront of buying all these digital assets. And then you got BlackRock, who's hoarding them pretty much. But if those countries, those companies were to sell, because if we're talking about Bitcoin going to $1 million, if those countries were to sell, those large companies were to sell, where does that put us? Because remember, there's only 21 million in circulation.
Yeah, so that's the whole, let's say, the whole thesis. There are different theses about, let's say, Bitcoin. Let's talk about Bitcoin first. So first, let's say it's mainly a technological breakthrough, because whatever anyone think about Bitcoin, it has been there since 2009, and we have never seen any glitch in the payment system. So it's basically about moving money from A to B through the internet uh, without A knowing B in a seamless way. And it has always worked, even when all of the miners, had to stop working in China. It works. We had CrowdStrike back in July with some payment system being down. Bitcoin was not down, so it has been tested, and it is indeed a technological breakthrough. That at least this is the way we see it. Then two, it's always also something which that can be seen as a store of value, a bit like gold. So there is, let's say, a growth in supply which is limited. And in the case of Bitcoin, we also know that at the end, the supply will be fully limited to 21 million, as you mentioned. So when let's say, when it comes to investments, it's an equation with two unknowns. So demand and supply. This one, the supply. And we know also how the supply evolves. So at least one part of the equation is known. The part of the equation which is not known is demand. And demand, it seems that demand is growing. And this is why the price is moving up. Okay. So that's what we let's say see with Bitcoin as, again, a store of value which is currently more volatile than gold. But if you compare Bitcoin with gold, remember that if you look at the chart of gold, it had some pretty violent ups and downs in history. So gold used to be very volatile, as it is the case with Bitcoin now. So now that's for Bitcoin.
Yes.
But let's keep in mind that when it comes to cryptocurrencies or digital assets, the main application for the time being of cryptocurrencies is stablecoin with Tether or USDC, for instance. And I think that the good thing with stablecoins is that if you think about some places in the world where people have limited, if even no access to the banking system, these stablecoins are changing their life. They are enabling them to make payments, to make micropayments, to make transfer, to save money through digital application with a currency which is stablecoins are back to the dollar, are pegged to the dollar. So there are local currencies. If you think about countries like Africa, for instance, the local currencies are making ups and downs,
Yes.
and they really enjoy to have a way to pay, to save, to transfer in a digital way with the currency which is pegged to the dollar. And this is, creating an opportunity for financial inclusion. So cryptos are not just about, let's say, the crazy volatility of Bitcoin. It's also about changing the life of the people. And it is indeed happening with these stable coins. Will Bitcoin one day replace the fiat system? I don't know, and I don't think so. I think that it will coexist with fiat currencies, but probably, let's say, gain in importance, because indeed it is like the equivalent of digital gold. But unlike gold, it's much easier to transfer uh, because it is something which is digital.
Now, I never thought about stable coins like that and how you put it in a way countries or areas that are underbanked and don't have access to banking or checking account or whatever, and that they can get on and use it. And that could be alone a billion people,
Yep.
which would keep the so because a lot of these stable coins have interest rates on them. Like if you hold them, you have interest rates on them, and that does make a humongous difference because nowadays, I don't know if you know about the U.S. banking system. A lot of the savings account, you're not getting no money for keeping your money in
Yeah, I
the
heard
bank.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's horrible here. But I know I have U.S. Stable coin, and it's 5% interest, APY, to hold
Yep.
your money in there. I think that makes a huge difference. That brings us back to a time in like the 1920s where you could put your money in the bank. You don't really have to put it in the stock market, and you will see a return,
Mhm.
and it'll be a safe return. I think that prevalent would make everything a lot better. A lot of people will want to use it. But opportunities nowadays, for bigger opportunities where the retail investor have a hard time getting into, like for example, large manufacturing, Apple moving to India, Apple companies moving to India and taking advantage of that. Where do you see AI fitting in? And because India is talking about employing 1.5 billion people, but we also have AI where a lot of people is talking about robotics and taking over people's jobs and changing the labor force. Do you see that only in the US or do you see that in other countries?
Well, it's going to change. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to change the labor force, but in a good way. Innovation usually creates jobs. Ultimately, nets. It changes the way people work. It changes the nature of job, but nets. It increases the number of jobs. If you let's take another example, like Microsoft Excel or the Windows, suite. At the end, was a boost to productivity, but enabled the creation of new jobs. So this is the way I see it. I think that what is interesting with AI now is that we haven't seen too much the applications. We talk a lot about, let's say, using ChatGPT to getting faster and replacing, let's say, some task, but we haven't seen some, let's say, key application, although they already exist. I'm going to take one example: healthcare. Healthcare AI is going to dramatically change the way diagnoses are made. So having much earlier diagnosis for let's say disease, which are very bad one, like cancer, for instance. So the way tumors will be let's say detected thanks to AI is going to be a huge improvement. But it already works for instance, take one. I'm going to take one example. Let's say
Who,
close
wait,
to.
wait, before you move on, who is leading, what company, what individual is leading that AI detection of diseases early on? What company is
But
creating that? Do you know?
no, there are many, well, private companies, involved into this. But again, we're going to see the major medtech companies, the major pharma companies, either developing their own AI capabilities or buying these private companies to integrate, let's say, AI capabilities into the system. I was going to take an example on the medtech side, like diabetes. So diabetes level 1, this is a case I know for family reasons, is that you need to take regular uh, blood, let's say, measures to see how your level of insulin is, and then you need to talk to the machine to inject, let's say, insulins in your body. No, now we already have AI, integrated into some of these, machine and captors, and basically they are, let's say, in a closed loop. They talk to each other, which means that the machine is basically managing everything, and that wasn't the case before. So AI is already, let's say, changing the way people, let's say, live with their disease, but in a much better way, because it's more comfort and it's so much more precise, which means that you have less secondary effects. So it's already there. So I think healthcare AI is going to change so many things. And again, there are so many, let's say, US companies, but also international companies looking at it. So I think that the applications are coming, and it's for, let's say, it's going to improve life. It's something which is positive.
I think healthcare is such a big thing, and I think around the world, everywhere, definitely
Yeah,
a big money maker in the US.
yeah,
Um, Everybody, biotech, health insurance, hospitals, if anybody can get into the early stages of those, Obviously you'll make a significant amount of money. You can discover a company in biotech. Pretty much that's what we're talking about is biotech with the AI detection. And you can find the company that's going to go all the way, get FDA approval, patent approval. But the race is going to be stiff. There's going to be tens of thousands of companies out there trying to do this.
Yeah.
And there's
On-
always going to be one winner.
and think about another application is in the legal side. Lawyers, they charge a lot of money to listen to your case and then write something, in order to defend your case. With integrated AI software, there is, let's say, listening, understanding of your case, and then immediate response, through some AI software to solve it and prepare a case. So here, there will be many disruption. And I think, like it is always the case with technology, it's about productivity improvements. So lowering the costs, but also expanding the sets of opportunities and improving quality. So these
Where
are
do you,
yeah. Sorry.
sorry. Where do you see the money, the big money is going to? Where do you see that?
Well, I tend to look at what is happening from a stock market perspective, because the stock market knows things that many people don't. And the reality is that never ever has the US been so big in terms of total market cap in the world. It has just crossed 50% of the MSCI world, all countries. Never ever the US has been so big. So that's the first trend. Despite the fact that we see, some countries like India and other, Asian countries making some, let's say, progress, the US has never been so powerful on that side. And then the other trends from a sector point of view is tech. Tech is very important. Like semiconductors. Semiconductors is the new gold. It's so important to have semiconductors because it gives you, let's say, a hedge in your industry, and also it's less rosy news, but it also gives you a hedge in terms of defense. If you want to have the best army in the world nowadays, you need to have the best semiconductors. So there is currently a hunt, for semiconductors. You got this. You had the Chips Act in the U.S. With the Chips Act, the Biden administration is making sure that the semiconductors manufacturing is happening in the US. You will not be dependent on some manufacturing based in Taiwan or other places. So tech is really eating the world. Tech is becoming so important. Innovation is also one way to improve productivity. If you improve productivity, you can offset, for instance, wage inflation.
Yeah.
So you see the importance of tech. So US rising, tech rising are the two main trends we're currently seeing.
Tech has been dominating for the last 40 years. Definitely the NASDAQ, it completely dominated. We're moving so fast in the technology space. It's like we're getting to a point we can't even keep up. But put all that aside, man, how you travel a lot, you're going to different countries. Man, how are you able to still be successful?
Well, I'm not always successful, but I think one key thing is I'm really passionate about what I do. I think for anyone, uh, if you are lucky enough to be passionate about your job, okay, you go over some of, let's say, the hurdles, some of the difficulties, some of the long days. You need to love what you do. And on my side, I really love the investment side. It's like a hobby, so I don't feel like working, and I feel very lucky to indeed having a job which enables me to see the world, to understand what's going on, or try to understand what's going on. So I think passion is a key word. Being passionate about what you do is key.
Not passion is very key, you know what I mean? But you do gotta love it because that's what keeps you going. For I guess for 25 years you've been doing that long. I know you're in a world where you might start off with 10 people. By the time you get to the third year, it's just you and another guy.
Yeah,
It's a tough world to be in, and
yeah,
definitely
exactly.
investments.
It
You
is.
know, there's times where the market's down, there's times where the market's up, and when the market's down, a lot of people take a hit. But when the market's up, everybody's riding high, investments going good, economy's moving well. Um, but what I think is a lot of it to longevity is like a mindset.
Yep.
It is a mindset to me to for longevity to keep doing something over and over again, and you got to put that passion, that hustle behind it. Like you get on a plane every day. At some point, that seems like that gets boring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also there is something which is very important is this little extra you can do every day. This 1% extra rule
Yeah,
with the compounding effect. So I also try to tell this to my kids. Say, okay, you think it's a small effort, but if every day you do a small effort and you discover a new thing, that's compounds. And by the way, you were mentioning traveling. Traveling can sometimes be indeed harassing. It's you have to, okay, there are some delays, with the plane. You don't know at what time you'll come at home, but each time you travel, you learn something new. I think that's
that's the
something.
best way to see it.
Exactly. Yeah, you
Yeah,
always learn something. You always, meet with someone new that will can become a friend or a business partner. So there is always something to learn.
definitely, definitely. But Charles, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you for the time.
Well, that was great. I really appreciate a little disclaimer on my side. So, we don't, let's say, deal with U.S. clients. We
Yeah,
invest into U.S. stocks and U.S. bonds, and
yes.
I personally enjoy having discussions with guys like you. So
Man, I
that's
really personally enjoy having discussions with you too. And I think everybody listening to this and watching this will really appreciate your insight, your input of where you see the world moving. Um, Definitely in the digital space, because I think everybody sees as trying to get into Bitcoin, Ethereum, very important. It might be an opportunity because you don't need that much money. You can put a little by little to get in. And
yeah.
so it makes it a lot easier. So I think with what you said is very important. Brings different perspective, a lot of knowledge. And I thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Kenny. We appreciate.